Hey guys, welcome back to The Fishing Teacher. Appreciate you guys swinging by the channel today. And we're going to have a conversation on fishing lily pads today. Lily pads are a common aquatic vegetation in a lot of lakes across the country. Yours may or may not have it. If you've got lily pads, this is going to be a good video for y'all. And if you ever you may not have lily pads where you're fishing, but if you ever do get in a situation to fish them, this video is going to help you guys out. So we'll get into that today. Also, guys, before we get started, a couple quick things to remind you of. You guys have heard me talking about it a bunch the last 2 weeks, but I started working with Cast King Reels about 3 weeks ago. Guys, they have got an incredible reel line. They got reels at all different price points. The attention to detail, guys, and the components on these reels are just unbelievable. They are the most backlash-free reels I have ever seen in my life. I'll put my Cast King link in the description of this video. And if you guys use that link to order a reel and you then use the promo code Randy10, which is in the links in the description here, you get an additional discount on the reel. But I think you guys will really like them, so all that stuff's in the description of the video. And also, guys, I'll link the baits that I'm talking about here in today's video in my Tackle Warehouse description too, if you guys would like to pick up some of those. Okay, lily pads are I've got this love-hate relationship with lily pads because I love fishing them. They're fun to fish, but a lot of times they're hard to get fish out of them. It's like, I think probably lily pads, I lose more bass in lily pads than any other cover because of the stem system and the pad itself and the root system. The fish wrap around these roots so easy that there's some tips I'm gonna give you guys to get them out, but that's part of fishing lily pads. You're gonna lose some fish in them. Nevertheless, they're great bass habitat. They provide a lot of cover. They provide a lot of shade for the fish. A lot of bait fish like them. Smaller perch and stuff live in there. Just a great habitat for fish in general. So let's get into some specifics of it. Okay, you're gonna have three primary types of lily pads depending upon your part of the country. You're gonna have those lily pads, they're called dollar pads. They're about this big around. I call them little lily pads, but they're small like that. And then you've got larger lily pads that set flat on the water. And those little dollar pads, they set flat on the water. And then you have the type of lily pads that grow out of the water, where you can actually see the stems growing out a foot, maybe a foot and a half, and then the pad comes in there. So you got three different types of pad growth on there. Now, I'm gonna give you guys some tips and advice on how to fish all three of these type of areas on it. If you're fishing the pads that are flat across the surface like this is one of my favorite times to fish some type of a topwater bait over them. Just probably my favorite's a frog. Fishing a frog over the top of those flat pads, you can't beat it. This is the big gabbit mega bass. I'll put that link in the description. Maybe a horny toad, some type of a buzz toad that you can reel over it. But I do a lot better on the flat lily pads with some type of a surface lure on there. And a lot of it depends on how thick they are. If you got openings in it, or if the pads are isolated or whatever. If the pads are thick, where you have like little openings, maybe this big around, the frog and the buzz toad's gonna be really good. But if the pads are more isolated, say for example, you got a section where there's a dozen pads in an area, maybe they're spaced that far apart, like a pad here, a pad there. This is a good time to cast like a Texas rig worm around them, because anytime you have a lily pad that's on the water, the lily pad root system is extensive underneath it. So what I like to do is on those isolated pads, I'll fan cast like a Texas rig worm, a Cinco Texas rig soft plastic stick bait around the outside perimeter of those things. Sometimes I'll run a chatterbait or a little crankbait, a shallow running crankbait behind them. Those are for the flat pads. Now, my favorite type of lily pad to fish are the ones that have the stems that come out of the water. I think personally, these are the best pads to fish. I've caught more bass and I've caught bigger bass in those pads that come out of the water than I have the flat ones by far. And there's two primary ways to fish a pad that comes out of the water. By far, 90% of the time, I flip and pitch these pads. Primarily I flip because the pads are thick, which requires just the straight flipping technique, not necessarily the pitching. And the other 10% of the time I'll run like a swim jig or a chatterbait or a spinnerbait on the outside edge of those pads. That's about 10% of the time. That can work pretty good, like on a low light condition. But primarily I'm going to the straight flipping situation on the pads that come out of the water. Now, out of all my pad fishing experience, and I fished them all over the country, guys. I fished pads in the Potomac River. I fished pads all over in Florida, Alabama. There's even pads in Missouri here. I flipped Arkansas, Oklahoma. I fished pads everywhere. The two best flipping baits for me are a black and blue jig and a soft plastic stick bait. Something, depending upon the water visibility. If the water visibility is a little bit cleaner, like something, 1.5 or 2 foot or cleaner like that, I really like the soft plastic stick bait. If the water's has some stain to it, like it's maybe 8 to 10 inches of visibility, you can't beat the full-size black and blue jig with it. Just a big full-size jig. This is my Blaukat Throwback jig right here, black and blue. These two right here is about all you need to flip and pitch with. I've experimented with a lot of different baits, and there's a lot of them that work, don't get me wrong, but as far as getting numbers and quality fish, these are the two baits right here that'll do the best for you. Sometimes on the soft plastic stick bait, I will throw like a black and blue one if the water's a little bit dirtier, but love fishing these. Fish both of them on 25-pound test line. And also, one of the things you're going to find out about flipping pads, you're going to get more bites on anything you flip with a little bit lighter weight. So normally I'll use like a 1/8 or a 3/16 ounce sinker on the soft plastic stick bait, and then I'll go to like a 3/8 ounce jig with a big trailer on it to slow it down when I'm fishing the jig with it. Main thing with it is you have to be slow and methodical, and you have to put the jig or the soft plastic stick bait in some of the smallest openings that you have. If you have an opening like this big in the pad field, probably not going to be that good. I like an opening about that big around, something like, big around as a coffee can lid or something, or smaller, or like a silver dollar is going to be really good with that. And the thing, when you get a bite flipping, you have got to bear down on pretty hard. A lot of you guys hear me talking about reeling with a tight line and then pulling into the fish like that. When you're flipping lily pads, this is the one time that I really try to crack them hard, because you got to get that fish, you got to get the head of that fish out of those pads. So when I get a bite with that, I'll reel down and I'll actually set the hook hard when I'm flipping lily pads. I don't normally do that with any other type of cover, but if you let that fish move and not get it off the bottom out of those pads, they're going to wrap you up and get off so many times. More than not, they'll do that. So it's just part of it, though. You're going to definitely lose some with that. But anyway, guys, the main thing with it is, fish slow and methodical. There's going to be certain sections of the pads that are going to be better than others. I mean, pads are like any other piece of cover. There's some irregular features and irregularities within the pad fields that make some area high percentage areas. But for the most part, one of the things that I found about pad fishing is if you're getting a few bites in a pad field, it's a good indication there's a lot of bass in there. And you just sort of have to, poke around and fish slow. Sometimes the fish will be out on the edges where you pitch 3 or 4 foot back end off the edge. Other times you may have to get your boat 20 foot up in the pad field or 50 foot up in the pad field if it's an extensive field to get to them like that. But anyway, great bass habitat, guys. Give them a try. Hope it helps you guys catch some. We'll talk later.